Back by popular demand, Karen Mitchell's final part 3 interview. It may not necessarily be strictly about intactivism, but it's quite interesting to watch. Karen Mitchell's part 1 and part 2 was strictly about intactivism, though.
An interesting story about two women, not on the circumcision topic, that I had in my prenatal classes who both got diagnosed with gestational diabetes at exactly the same time. And the one woman, she fell into the system and followed all the rules in the system. And the other woman, I had quite a close relationship with her. And one day she was in my store and she'd just been diagnosed, and she was just gonna have an appointment, and they were gonna figure out what they were gonna do. They were gonna give her their diet. They were going to, decide whether more extraordinary measures would need to be done than the diet and whatever. And this woman was originally from, her family lineage was actually Samoan. And she had had relatives with diabetes and serious diabetes issues. But I'd become quite close to this family. I actually still know them to this day. We're still Facebook friends. And now their son he's grown. But I said to her, I don't know what, because I said, here's how you need to eat, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember at the time I was selling hemp seeds in my store. And I said, you should be eating some hemp seeds every day. It helps clean out the blood and it gives you lots of protein, and, maybe add some to your. And she had this bag of hemp seeds. And she was looking at it and she said, she says, well, maybe, when I go in for this appointment, I'll ask the doctor about that. And I said to her, I don't know what made me say it, but I said to her, oh, yeah, is that the same doctor who saw over your now deceased relatives? Is that the same one that cared for them? And I guess it really made her think, because she kind of was shocked, because I couldn't believe someone feeling that they needed a doctor's approval to eat a seed, a hemp seed, for crying out loud. It's like, eating a nut or something, you need to ask the doctor, is this okay? And so I said to her, here. So then she seemed to be a little bit more open. And I said, look, here's what I think you should do. I said, I'll lay out how, and I'm not a nutritionist, but I said, here's how I think you should do it. Go into them and say, phone them up and say, I've got this appointment for whatever, Monday, Tuesday. I want a week. Give me 1 week and let me be retested. Give me 1 week. And she did. She was very brave, because they don't like it when you question them. They do not like it. And they will be very mean and condescending to you and say horrible things to you, which ultimately always takes them to the place of, you don't care about your baby as much as we do. That's always the final thing, is always like, we're going to show you how dumb you are for not listening to what we tell you to do without even thinking about it, because that's what they do.
I think that indicates that you need to get away from them. Don't trust them then.
100%, but people don't, they get sucked right into it. They get women especially,
right,
are like, oh my God, but I do care about my baby. I do love my baby. And if I want to prove my love to my baby, I have to do what they tell me. Anyway, this woman was very strong. She held tough. She says, I want 1 week. So she went away. She did what I had suggested she do for the week. She went back, she got tested, and they said, oh, okay, I don't know, the numbers are fine. You seem to be fine. Off you go. She had very healthy pregnancy. She ended up having quite a large son. Again, Samoan heritage. Samoan people have big babies, hey? And she was very lucky that she wasn't in that whole treadmill of getting poked and prodded and measured and relentless ultrasounds and the size of the baby, because the fact of the matter was, with her Samoan heritage, she did end up having, her baby was over 9 pounds. He was a big boy, but there was nothing wrong with her. She was very healthy. So she had a very healthy, normal labor, great first labor, no complications, very straightforward, typical length of labor, had this beautiful baby boy. He now is quite the football player, so it's been great to watch as he's grown over the years. The other woman who got sucked into the system, and the system gave the best it could give her, with the nutritionists, with the doctors, with everything else, they decided in their wisdom that at a certain point in her pregnancy, she would have to have a cesarean. Well, when they took this baby out of her, it didn't have a proper suck response yet. They took it out. They must have taken it out of her too early because its suck response was not developed. And this poor baby, they poked and prodded it so much that when we finally had our class reunion, her baby, this lady's baby, was already 4 months old. It was actually still being tube fed through its belly, because when it had been born in the hospital, they had been poking and prodding it so much in its mouth that this poor child got an aversion to anything in its mouth. So you couldn't bottle feed it. You couldn't feed it. You couldn't put food in the child's mouth because it had been so traumatized with all the crap they had done to this kid's mouth that at 4 months old, it was tube fed through its belly still. This couple, it was heartbreaking to see. This couple actually, at the largest children's hospital in Vancouver, they had no plan for these people. No way, no ideas, nothing to help get this baby off tube feeding. This couple ended up paying about $3,000 to some hospital in Switzerland online to help coach them through how they could get their child to eat normally at some point.
So the point is that a lot of physicians to take care of babies don't have the best judgment or best intentions either.
They don't have a plan. They don't have anything. And it was funny, after the reunion, I was just so in the moment. I'd actually forgotten that this was the tale of two women, both diagnosed with gestational diabetes at the same time. And the woman who had had the healthy pregnancy and healthy boy, as she was leaving, she said to me, she said, that could have been me. That could have been my baby. And I had actually forgotten that they had been both diagnosed at the same time. And she said, thank you. She said that could have been me and my baby. Yeah. And we don't know, I don't know. I never kept up with that other woman. I don't know what happened. But when a baby suffers that kind of trauma the first time in its life, it's insane to think how that could affect that person. Having that kind of you think about our mouths, speech, food, affection, all of the things that our mouths in a normal human mean. For this human to start out life with literally getting to the point as a baby that they can't have any touch in their mouth. I would think that in terms of what the long-lasting effects are, we have no freaking idea. No idea. So that, to me, is, people just don't think enough about the choices they make in pregnancy that is going to affect a human for the rest of their life. And I just heard the other day, it was funny, I never knew this before, but of course there was a very famous baby doctor called Spock, Benjamin Spock, back in the 50s, who wrote the baby manual for women of the time. And pretty well everything the guy said I disagreed with. He was very into scheduling, bottle feeding, let the kid cry it out all night, just so long as you have a good night's sleep, they'll learn, all this stuff. And I never knew, and I just heard the other day, he had a child who committed suicide.
How about that?
Yeah. And the guy, but he did come out years later, I think in the 90s, he came out and he basically said he was wrong. He did come out and say but thousands and thousands and thousands of parents all over the world used his book as the gospel. And I always think it would be interesting just to, this truth is there for us to see. The truth is there, but it's not, it's like it gets shuffled under the rug because it doesn't serve the people who want to make money. It doesn't serve the people who are in power and want to make money. That doesn't serve them. Knowing logically and statistically that healthy women are better off having babies at home does not serve people who make money. It does not serve the pharmaceutical industry. It does not even serve the physicians and the nurses because that shuts them out. So it's everything, and I used to wonder about that all the time and think, how come, this person got to be where they are? Well, they got to be where they are because what they do serves these corrupt, evil people who make money. And because I'll tell you, all of the ways that I teach, the ways that I tell people, it's how people can save money,
Have,
how people can be more independent. Sorry.
have you noticed that as children we get taught to be honest and play by the rules, don't break the law, follow the rules, don't steal from other people, don't deceive people, don't cheat them. But yet the people who climb to the top, the most successful, a lot of them get there by doing those things.
100%. That's exactly what it is. And I
Hopefully
think
not 100%. Hopefully not
hopefully
that many.
not, but I look at it and I had at one point I had two brick and mortar locations and I had a big I would have a retail in the front. I had classes and mom and baby groups and different things in my back area. And I would only sell products that I thought were useful, companies that I thought had integrity, things that I thought people needed. And I would see these other products just go crazy, go through the roof, and everyone wanted them, and I just wouldn't carry them because they either were bad products or didn't make any sense or who would need this. And yeah, I think I've seen that for years, that the things that actually help people be. That's why I'm such a big fan of that Jason Christoff, who talks about brainwashing and how badly people are brainwashed, because finally I'm like, okay, that's what's going on. Yeah, it's definitely the people who are making money on people, and the fact that they're not strong, the fact that they're weak, the fact that they're
Ignorant
ignorant.
and not critical thinkers.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's me, Pods. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pods e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail Over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the Pods e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other Intactivist content to empower, teach, and update Intactivists with very important information, as well as being the voice for the Intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview.
Have you seen the movie Idiocracy?
No, I haven't, but I'll write it down.
Well, the man who made it, director, producer, he noticed that he was the smartest kid in his class, and the other kids like made fun of him, saying he was being the teacher's pet for scoring higher on tests when he was a kid, and he didn't think he was really smart. So he thought, well, if most people I'm around are dumb, and maybe in the future everyone will be stupid. It takes place 500 years in the future, and everyone's stupid, but this two people from our time get frozen and wake up in the future, and they're just normal, average people, but they're extraordinary by comparison. It makes them a genius by those standards.
Yeah, and you know what? I see that, the dumbing down of society for sure, being the age I am, because I had a friend visit me here in Calgary, and I took her to she likes shiny things, and she likes stores, and so I took her into the outlet mall, and we were in the Kate Spade outlet looking, and I was looking, there was a sale table, and I was looking at the shiny things, and this lovely lovely young woman all of a sudden appears beside me, and she's got her phone, she's just standing beside me, and she's like this, and I'm like, and I looked over and I realized, I said, you're here to tell me how much these things are with the sale on, aren't you? Because people are literally too stupid to figure out what 50% off is. And
so was their phone on the calculator?
Yeah. And I'm like, and I said to her, I said, oh, that's okay, darling. You don't have to worry. I know how to figure out percentages. And she said, oh, and I said, yeah, you see this? And I said, oh, this is, the regular price is X amount, and this one's 60% off. So here's how I would do it. And as I was doing it in my head, she was like on the calculator like this. And then I come up with the answer, and she looks at me. Wow. She was just so impressed with something that, a decade or two ago, it would have been like mandatory for a human to understand that.
Fifth grade level math?
Yeah, like crazy. So yeah, and I also see it. I have a couple of jobs now, and one of them I stand in I have a couple of silly jobs, and one of them I actually stand for my little shift I do part-time. I stand in my little shift in Costco's. And we have a tiny little, it's a display. It's made to fit on a pallet to travel from store to store. And it's like a tiny little shower. And I literally, people say, can I buy this? And I'll say, well, it's not a real thing. It's not a real size. It's not oh, this looks like the size I need. And I literally have to stand in it to show people that it comes up to here. Like they are that dumb that they actually think it's a real thing they could use and buy, and they will argue about buying it. No, this is the perfect size. And I'll say, no. And it literally takes me stepping into it so that they can see that it only comes up to here. It's not a real thing, but they're that dumb. The other thing, I of course, the weight issue. Oh, and this is another thing I learned a long time ago in prenatal class.
In the movie Idiocracy, corporations have a massive influence. Logos are everywhere. They've taken over a lot of other businesses. People are obsessed with buying products. Also reminds me of the movie They Live, where people, well, actually, they were aliens, but they look like people. And then there's the resistance, and they had these glasses to see them. But when they looked at, say, billboards and magazines and money, it said, consume, buy, obey the money. This is your God now. So it was the theme that critical thought was dying, and the people who controlled the products were taking charge. They were dumbing people down to control them.
Well, you might be too young to remember it, but there was a show called Twilight Zone many years ago.
Yeah.
And it's even funny, like I think about some of the thoughts I had even as a child and how, I don't know, now they seem like more significant than they were at the time. But one of the shows they had, if you recall, was the one where like this woman thought she was really ugly. She didn't fit in. She wanted to have surgery to have her face changed. And you never saw any of the people till the very end of the show.
I saw it.
You know what I mean? And then the end of the show, you see like she's like stunningly beautiful and normal looking, and they all look like they all have pig faces.
Yes, I saw that. I remember.
And that is reality. That is absolute reality. That people are literally, they're choosing death, they're choosing poison, they're choosing self-harm because they're so brainwashed that to them has been shown to them as to be successful. And actually, the other show that is very significant, I remember my granddaughter put a show on. It's about how all the people ended up on another planet, and they were all so big and fat. They had to ride around and things. They couldn't do anything for themselves.
Was that Wall-E, the movie?
Yes.
Yeah, where the robots left and the was trashed.
Yes.
That movie could be a sequel to Idiocracy.
Yes. And that is what's happened as well. I was telling you how I stand in Costco's and I sometimes watch people, and I'm astounded by the number of people that are like literally 300 and 400 pounds walking around like everything's normal. Like and you can see, when you're in there, you can see the slim athletic people have one thing in their buggies, and the people who are 300 and 400 pounds, it's quite obvious to see why they're 300 and 400 pounds, because you look at their buggies and what it's full with. And I find these people are strangers to me, and yet I find it it's like upsetting. Like I want to say, gosh, like, why is your buggy full of all these chocolate bars when you're 400 pounds? Like, what gives there? And we've now gotten to a point in society where we're all supposed to, you look at a lot of our politicians. You look at a lot of the people who were health ministers, and they were like 100 pounds overweight. Well, I'm sorry, but why would I take any kind of health advice from someone who literally looks like they're going to get buried in a piano case? Like, it's ludicrous to, would we have politicians walk into their meeting, go, just a sec here, I gotta, snort some coke, or I'm gonna just shoot up for a minute and then I'll come on camera and tell you what to do. No, we wouldn't.
Well, I think in America we just got rid of a president who does that with his son.
Yeah, and look at all, like, there's been a bunch of health ministers there too that are absolutely gigantic. And why are we all walking around like this is normal? Like if they were on stage and they fell over drunk, we'd say, oh, well, maybe a little, maybe we should look at, gee, do you think you have a problem with alcohol? But we're not allowed to say, gee, do you think you have a problem with food? Food is a pretty basic thing. And if you don't have any sort of a basic understanding on how to properly nourish your body, then you're not very smart. I was talking to a woman, again, diagnosed with gestational diabetes. Her and her husband and I are sitting doing this prenatal class. I'm talking about what she should and shouldn't be eating. I get to the whole end of the thing, and I did a talk about bread, right? We bread, sugar, blah, 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 do. I get to the very end. She looks at me, she says, well, but can I have muffins? But the woman with the muffin that I was talking about earlier, to spend 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes talking about nutrition to explain bread converts to sugar. Now that you have been diagnosed here, you really got to lay off sugar because that's just going to make it worse. And then for her to sit and stare blindly, oh, but can I have a muffin? Like a muffin's not sugar? It really, when she said that, and her husband actually kind of looked like, what's going on here? Is she on another planet? And I realized that all these people who are walking around at 300 and 400 pounds, when your body can't function, when your body is basically fighting every day to stay alive, just fighting to stay alive, to just get that great big foot out of bed and just live one more day. How much action do you think's going on in the brain? There's no action going on in the brain. I'm sorry, but now I kind of realize it's like if your body can't function, how the heck is your brain functioning? It's not functioning. And that's another problem that we have. It's because in the system, they've come at people from every single angle. So they've come the fear mongering, fear, which stops people from thinking clearly. And then the food that's garbage. The sugar is poison. And then we come up with these great, we got a great idea. We put an ad on TV with a Big Mac, and then right after it, we put an ad on for Skip the Dishes. How perfect is that? You don't even have to get off your big fat ass and make yourself a sandwich. You can actually sit on your big fat ass and have, 3,000 calories of poison delivered right to your big fat ass. Like, it's so obvious now. It has become so completely obvious that this is, it's war. It's literally a war on humanity. We are killing humanity. And then the gender thing comes up. Well, that's a great way to annihilate your population. If they can't procreate, you're done, man. That's the best possible way to kill you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's got to be
And
a population reduction measure.
it's insanity.
Doing
And
it to kids sterilizes them. It gives them health problems because their bodies don't develop properly. So they live shorter lives, and quite quite a few of them, a lot of them commit suicide. So it's got to be to just reduce the amount of people in this world,
yep,
and of course to make money for the medical industrial complex,
again.
and it gets them overly emotional. It's like, oh, anybody who doesn't agree with it's the enemy. So then it's a political thing. It's to kill critical thinking. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, absolutely. I went to one of my jobs. I got taken to a fancy tea the other day with a bunch of rich people. And there was a she or a he who was a she sitting at the table who had actually that morning been given out a Governor General's Award in Canada for their work spreading this supposedly useful information about what a struggle it had been. Now, and I mean, I find the whole thing humorous because this person, they wanted to be called, they were a they. So I even found that interesting that, okay, let me get this straight now. You were born a woman, but you were so hell-bent on becoming a man that you changed your physical appearance in your body, but you still are not comfortable being called a man and you are not comfortable being called a woman. So you have to be called a they. So there's not even, it doesn't even logically make sense to me. There's no commitment of any kind there.
Maybe it's because this person is biologically female and is wanting to reject that, but can never be a man. So they settle for the in between.
I don't know, but anyway, I had missed, they had made a speech about how horrible, because I live in Alberta and our premier is Danielle Smith, and she's the only one in the country that has come up and said, not doing this. We're not operating on children. We're not giving children puberty blockers. She's been quite strong about that and starting to like end this nonsense in this province. And he and this room full of people, it was a very difficult situation to be in because I just wanted to scream, but they are all sitting there acting like they're on the right side of history. And here's this they person making a statement about how troubling it is that the premier of this province is going to be responsible for so many children's deaths because they'll be so upset that they can't be the opposite sex and that they can't start their transitioning as children. And yeah, it was weird. These people in their altered reality, and they're all you're doing is you're killing the human race is what you're doing. Telling people one thing, it's the same as the gender thing. Oh no, you need to say this is you need to say this is a woman. Now we had a LA here that wouldn't, she was thrown out of caucus because she dared to express her opinions. And then they grilled her. They had a bunch of people who were all for this gender ideology. And they basically, the guy dressed as the woman says to her right off the bat, he says, well, this conversation isn't going to go any further until you say I'm a woman. And she's like, well, I would have to think on that. Well, then I'm not talking to you. This isn't going any further. And he was literally bullying her, and she wasn't even allowed to have her own thought on the matter. And looking at someone who's clearly a man, you can see with your own eyes, they're very much obviously a male, and yet they want her to say, oh yeah, you're a woman. Yeah, crazy. And it's hard to understand. And I guess I wondered through the COVID too. I mean, but I did hear, I think I heard one, and I can't remember the guy's name, talking about why some of us didn't get sucked in and why some of us think differently. For me, I believe that I came to Canada as an immigrant, and we moved around quite a bit. My dad was a bit of a grass is greener elsewhere, so we did some moving. I was always the new kid. I was always the immigrant. I had a funny little accent when I was younger. I wore homemade jeans and things that didn't fit in. And so my entire life, I have never fit in. I don't care about fitting in. I don't have that pressure to fit in. I can think freely and think for myself. And so I think that partly because of my upbringing of I've never been the popular kid. I've never fit in. So I always had that freedom to think for myself. Then when I got involved in birth work in the 80s, I was privy to going into the hospitals. I was privy to sitting there and hearing, and I did a lot of research on the history of birth and what happened there and how doctors stole it from midwives and how that whole thing happened in the first place. And I remember this really popular doctor sitting at this foot of this woman's bed while she's pushing a baby out. And he says, pushing a baby out, it's the most unnatural thing in the world. And so I would hear doctors say these stupid things constantly, like just stupid. And so I never really had this, they're gods, I can't question them. I never really had that. I always wondered. I always questioned. It really took off when I had my own family, but I guess I just never had that, I got to go with what the herd says. I got to do, because that's what I always wondered too. Why do some of us not get sucked into that? Why do some of us have the ability to critical think about these things? Because we've seen over the last, and with the COVID thing, you still see people running in and getting shots for something that it won't stop them getting,
Right.
and it won't stop them giving. And you're thinking, but where, why, what, where, there's no logic in thinking. And so I think that when I heard that one doctor talk about that, I did think that made a lot of sense to me, that some of us, for whatever reasons, partly maybe because we've never had the luxury of fitting in. We've never had the luxury of being the cool kids. So we just have never gotten used to it, and we don't care.
But now you're experiencing the benefits in that and not conforming, because conformity has become detrimental now. Conformity started out as good because if you go back into history, you can
Yeah.
see that conforming meant that you followed the rules of the group, and those rules were there to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is the behavior we can trust, and as long as you don't deviate from it, then we think you're still one of us and you won't betray us. And people on the outside are different. Well, they have different beliefs, and we don't know what they're going to do, so we can't just let them in and trust them.
Yeah.
We want to take all of our resources, but that mentality has been exploited now, and it's now just, oh well, conform to whatever because everyone's doing it. Don't question if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And being the outsiders work to your benefit because you stay away. You notice that certain medical advice is not good for you. Do you think?
And knowing things intuitively too, like I think, going back to that intuition, because we do have intuition, and knowing, like, for example, I started following that Jason Christoff, right? And I had it in my head. I would listen to his things and I would go, yeah, I think, I think there's, yeah, that's right. I didn't, there were certain things I wasn't like 100%. Oh yeah, I want to give up coffee. Yeah. I wasn't like, it was like, oh yeah, I think he's right. Well, I didn't just listen to him and go, oh yeah, he's right. I thought about, well, what does it look like in my life? Well, for one thing, for coffee, for example, right? If I ever got sick, if I got a cold or something, I would never drink coffee. It would only be tea. It would always go to tea. When I was pregnant, I never wanted coffee, never wanted it. So I know somewhere it's not good for me. I know that. That is the truth. And the more that I looked into it and the more I researched, the more I found that out. So I actually gave coffee up and alcohol, because I know they are poisons. And I do want my brain to work and function as I am in my 60s now. Your body, you can get away with, and it's the same with the food thing. You see people get away with a lot of crap when you're in your 20s, your 30s. You still look pretty good. You can still hang on. You can still make things happen. But once you get to be my age, I see people at my work that are literally like in scooters. In scooters, these people aren't even walking, and they're my age. And they're saying, oh, this or that. Well, that's a result of your choices. And the older people get, you can't hide those choices. You wear those choices.
Right.
Once you're at my age, there's no bluffing. You're not able to bluff. Your body will not allow you to bluff.
You start looking like your decisions at that point. You live the rest of your life looking that way.
Exactly. And I have many people who come up to me the same age as me who, who can barely move. And so you've got to be proactive. You've got to make choices for what life you want to live. You cannot live. Look at all the people now with the Ozempic, killing themselves with Ozempic.
What is Ozempic for?
Ozempic is for losing weight.
Okay.
And it regulates your GLP-1 hormone. But of course, like all pharmaceutical products, it's got a lot of side effects. Ozempic, and I say to people, I know people who are a decade or a dozen years younger than me right now that are basically, I've actually tried to send them in another direction, in a natural direction, to a product that won't kill them in the process. But I've got people I know who are a dozen years younger, or they're 15 or more years younger, or they've still got young children, and they're literally knowing the side effects, knowing that this product could kill them. They're still so desperate that they're willing to take it. And and there's this new buzz phrase they've got going on. Not sure if you've heard it or not. It's called food noise. So this phrase, came out of the blue. It's like, who plants this stuff for people to get onto? So now everyone's saying, well, it quiets the food noise because that's why people are 300 pounds because they have this food noise going on in their head that they can't control. And they are so easily led. And they have these ideas that these people who are telling them what to do actually care about them. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy because we all, money. It's that simple. And if we've seen anything about money and how money has changed hands, I think it should be pretty obvious this last 4 or so years who have been the big winners during the COVID scam have been the corporations, have been huge winners.
Pharmaceutical industries, of course.
And the pharmaceutical industries and the corporations. But, the mom and pop places in Canada, they got shut down. I mean, thousands of small businesses got shut down while a block away, McDonald's was like twice as busy. So because people being self-employed and having that independence is frowned on by the evildoers who they just want these corporations to be able to hand out these millions and trillions of dollar bonuses. And this country's unfortunately so filthy corrupt. With that, we have a whole government who has done nothing but line their pockets with money that's supposedly going to help environment. And, we had that whole Arrive scam app in Canada. $54 million just literally disappeared. It's so corrupt and there has been zero recognition of any of that. People have been screaming about it. There's been committees about it. There's been, all sorts, and nothing is done. And it's incredibly frustrating in this country. It's frightening, and it certainly, and for me personally, of course, I was held hostage in this country, like a criminal, unable to get on a plane or a train or a bus, unable to cross the border, like I was some kind of a criminal because I wouldn't take an experimental injection. I mean, it was when during the COVID, the only semblance of sanity that I had is that's why I would go to protests so I could meet other like-minded people because it felt so incredibly lonely. It was just so lonely because and you're just thinking this is madness. I had friends because you have to remember too. I've been teaching about childbirth vaccinations for a long time as well. So I knew, when the COVID happened, it was not a stretch for me to be thinking that the pharmaceutical companies were up to no good because I've seen the carnage from childhood vaccinations. I've met people who had perfectly healthy 18-month-olds who had their shots and the next day went to nonverbal, non-walking, drooling babies after they had been perfectly normal toddlers. So I've met those people. I know they're not crazy. I've seen that throughout my career. In Scotland, they delay them more, so it's different here. So I had experience with different countries thinking different things about them. But Canadians, it's a little bit arrogant because I found this when I was teaching prenatal classes as well, that they would somehow think, well, because of the way we do it here, we're the smartest and we're the best. And I would often start my prenatal classes by asking people where they thought we stacked up in infant mortality in the world. And the Americans are, somewhere around 24th, 25th in the world. And Canada would be around 17th in the world. Just probably because there was at that time, there was more of a probably poorer population in the States. And you'd get people in some situations where they really did have terrible, terrible diets because they were so poor, they were just kind of living on grits. But yeah, I would often start with that to try and sort of shake people into some reality. No, we are not the best in Canada. We are a long way from the best in Canada, and we do have things to learn from other countries that are actually doing things a lot better than we are. So I think that's part of the problem with Canada is that they've been sitting in this, look at us. We're so nice. We're nicer than the Americans and we care more. And, we do things right because we're just nice and that's how we do. And there's an arrogance to it that unfortunately has stopped people from being critical thinkers and looking at other places in the world and how they do things better than us and learning from it.
Well, I think America has that problem too, living in a bubble.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, living in a bubble. Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, let's hope there's some light for you guys now at the end of the tunnel. For us, it's still dark, dark days here. When you have a leader who's the most hated leader that we've ever had. He's had his own flag made about him. The man he can't go out publicly. We literally have a leader of the country who literally cannot go out publicly for getting harassed. We've never had that in Canada before, never. And his father was not well liked either. Whether it's Trudeau or Castro, I don't know. I'm not privy to that kind of information, and I wouldn't put my neck out. I would get up every morning and think, surely people know better than this. Now that we've recognized this, we must know better. But no. And because of the fact that there's been no retribution for the wrongdoers, it's clear to me that it can happen again. There has been no punishment for any of the lies, for any of the losses that people have suffered through. I was certainly one of the people that was very grateful to the truckers, the trucker convoy. But just so you know, we still have 2 men in jail. In Alberta, there are still 2 men that were at the Coots protest that are still being held in jail. And they had a trial. February, March. Their case went to trial. They were accused of conspiracy to murder RCMP officers. The jury found them not guilty, and they're still in jail because the Crown prosecutor said, I don't know. No, I don't like that. We're not, no. And so that's how bad it is in this country, that people can, 12 jurors drop their lives for 2 months, listen to evidence for 2 months, came back and say, no, we find no evidence that they were at all trying to do anything like that, not guilty. And guess what? These men are still in jail. That's how bad it is in Canada. It's terrible. I can't even, there were 4 of them originally at Coots put in jail and with no bail, people who didn't have a criminal record. They didn't catch weapons on them. They went to their farmhouses, their barns. Well, they're Alberta farm, everyone's got rifles on their farms. And they laid it out. They got everything they could from all of them, and they laid it out on a big table as if they were the cartel. And it was like farm rifles and shit like that. It was nothing. They didn't bring any of these weapons to the protest. They had to go find them. They had to forage for them. It's been one lie after another. The 2 men finally did get out after being in jail for years with no bail. Years. And there's still 2 men there. So this is what the government has done here to put the fear in anyone in any way opposes them. We have sunk down the hole of communism so far in this country. A dictatorship. We still have to listen to these same politicians who lie on the daily basis. And now they're doing, they're coming to us, oh no, everything's great, while we have more people at food banks than ever, and this is what's happened in society. It's to the point, like the government. Yes, it's great. No, we have hundreds of thousands of people at a food bank. We've never had that before. But yeah, our economy's doing great. Of course it is. It's madness. And at least, I think because Americans have a longer history of fighting for what they want, I think there's a little bit more of that sort of tenacity, whereas there's just too many Canadians are complacent, far too complacent. And they think, oh, everything's okay, and now they just walk around and like, we're just not going to talk about it. We're just not going to acknowledge it. We're not going to talk about people dying from shots. We're not going to talk about people losing their jobs. We're not going to talk about any of it. And that's what's happened in Canada. And never in my life have I gone and traveled around the world and had people feeling sorry for me like they do now. Because the rest of the world sees exactly what Canada has become. Just like your Trump, he knows exactly what Trudeau is. He sees it, he's spoken it, right? But for some reason or other, in this country, there's far too many people who are, and I think a lot of it is fear. They're just too afraid. They're just too afraid to stand up and see what the truth is. That the country's a mess. The people who are in government are simply self-serving money grubbers with no integrity, no soul. They just simply don't care. And people are they're too afraid to believe that. It's a sad state of affairs. I mean, the lawsuits are still going on. And I think obviously we've got more lawsuits against the government than there ever has been in history in this country. But it's still, something came out in the paper the other day that a little town back east, a little school in Ontario, these people were so dumb, they were literally so dumb, they actually asked veterans not to wear their uniforms during their November 11th Remembrance Day ceremony. And there was such a huge backlash, they had to basically do a 360, come out and apologize and say, oh, sorry about that. Oh, I guess, yeah, you can wear it. But this is how dumb they are, that they don't understand that, people are not going to be happy about that. The people who fought in the war for this country and for your rights are not going to be happy about being told they cannot wear their uniform. They were like checked right out. That's how dumb these idiots are.
Yeah. When I was in the army and deployed to Afghanistan, I met Canadian military there. So no,
Yeah. So they had to say, so, oh, sorry about that. You can wear your new uniform. Can you imagine?
Yeah, no, I am thinking about it. And I remember Veterans Day when I was out here seeing veterans in uniforms, and I would hate to be told that I couldn't wear it and that they couldn't. I know they would hate that too.
Yep, because somebody might be sensitive to it. Because
That's
somebody might have
insane.
their feelings hurt. Madness. So this country is, I don't know what it's going to take in this country to get people to wake up. They're very apathetic, very complacent. Yeah, it's so definitely there's never been a more despised leader in the history of the country. It's pretty bad when you have your own flag made that tells you to F off. That's how it is. It's a sad state of affairs in this country.
Okay. Thank you for your time today, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
We're all a team.
Yeah.
Okay, that was Karen. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll put her links down in the description below so you can follow her. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our other interviews and other activism content we release every single week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye!